The Austrian Grand Prix became chaotic due to a strange situation concerning a controversial aspect of Formula One. The FIA's monitoring system was inundated with an incredible number of occurrences at the Red Bull Ring where cars exceeded the track limits. Nearly 1,500 instances had to be examined, leading to additional penalties for 8 drivers even after the race had ended. As a result, the rankings in the top 10 were altered. This incident raises questions. Is this a new and problematic development regarding track limits? And what actions will be taken to address it, if any? Stay tuned as we delve and learn more about this topic. But before we do that, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button down below if you like all things F1. Alright, now let's get back to the video. During the Austrian GP, more than 100 lap times were invalidated as drivers consistently exceeded track limits, particularly at the final corners entry and exit. This led to 7 drivers, including Lewis Hamilton and Yuki Tsunoda, receiving time penalties during the race. However, an overwhelming number of potential track limit violations, totaling in the thousands, had to be reviewed after the race. The Red Bull Ring is known for track limit issues, especially at turn 10, where the mid-corner compression can cause cars to go wide. The wide curves on entry and exit also tempt drivers to push the boundaries. This year, the problem escalated with numerous complaints about deleted qualifying laps, preceding an astonishing number of violations during the race. Aston Martin raised concerns about the provincial classification since some cars were not penalized for exceeding track limits. The stewards acknowledged this protest and became aware of multiple deleted laps due to track limit violations that hadn't been previously addressed. Consequently, FIA Race Control had to review a significant number of potential infringements that couldn't be addressed during the race. This review was completed on Sunday evening, resulting in additional penalties being issued. Although the top 3 finishers remained the same, Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, and Sergio Perez, there were changes in the points positions and beyond the top 10. Carlos Sainz, who initially finished 4th, received a 10-second penalty, as did Lewis Hamilton and Pierre Gasly. This promoted Lando Norris to 4th and Fernando Alonso to 5th, while Sainz dropped to 6th. Hamilton fell behind his Mercedes teammate George Russell, and Lance Stroll gained 9th place ahead of Gasly. Aston Martin gained 3 points in the Constructors' Championship, while their rival Ferrari lost 4 points. This explains why Aston Martin was motivated to ensure the FIA addressed the track limit issues. Non-point scorers Alex Albon and Logan Sargent also received 10-second penalties. Esteban Ocon received a 30-second penalty. Nick de Vries received 15 seconds, and Yuki Tsunoda received 5 seconds. This situation revealed that the FIA's monitoring system was unable to handle the unprecedented number of track limit violations during the race. Since last year, a zero-tolerance policy has been implemented, requiring drivers to stay within the white lines to adhere to track limits. This replaced a more flexible approach where instructions varied from corner to corner, which had its advantages but also faced criticism due to perceived inconsistencies. The white line policy was in effect last year as well. The reason for the higher rates of invalidated lap times and penalties at the Red Bull Ring in 2023 is simply because the FIA is enforcing the rules more effectively. This year, they have increased their human resources, with 9 personnel assigned to monitor infractions from Race Control and the Remote Operations Center in Geneva. They use a combination of automatic loops and fixed zoomed-in cameras to detect offenses and report them to the stewards. Therefore, it is highly likely that there were not significantly more offenses this year than before. The more rigorous monitoring method had simply exposed a greater number of violations. As a result, the system for handling these violations, including recording, reporting, reviewing, and imposing penalties, was completely overwhelmed. There was insufficient time to review all the incidents, and it is possible that some were overlooked as well. Not surprisingly, everyone involved is eager to prevent a recurrence of this situation, and the stewards said they very strongly recommend that a solution be found to the track limit situation at this circuit. The FIA is taking action in response to the situation. It plans to reiterate its recommendation that the Red Bull Ring installs a gravel trap at the exit of turns 9 and 10. This suggestion was previously made after last year's race but was not implemented. Adding a gravel trap is a solution that has been supported by world champion Max Verstappen and other drivers. However, its implementation has been challenging due to the presence of MotoGP races at the Red Bull Ring. Tracks that host both two-wheeled and four-wheeled categories generally avoid gravel traps whenever possible because they are not suitable for motorcycles and pose risks to riders in case of falls. The FIA stated that while it is not a straightforward solution in relation to other series that race here, it has proved to be very effective at other corners and circuits with similar issues. Raising concerns about the demand for gravel traps is understandable, as it may seem like a self-centered position on the part of the FIA, representing Formula 1. It is important to acknowledge that circuits operate and rely on activities beyond the 1 week of the Grand Prix event. Gravel traps require significant financial investment for implementation and maintenance, especially when compared to asphalt runoffs. Additionally, when lower-tier categories with less experienced drivers race or test at these circuits, gravel traps can lead to more cars getting stuck if mistakes are made, causing disruptions and potentially affecting grassroots competitors who rely on track time. Should a driver paying their own money to participate in racing for enjoyment have a poorer experience simply because top-level drivers in Formula 1 struggle to stay within the track limits without the presence of gravel traps? Even if the FIA, F1 drivers, and teams were willing to contribute financially to the installation and upkeep of gravel traps, which seems unlikely, the circuits would still face long-term disadvantages. Frequent disruptions and inconveniences during events and tests could eventually deter other championships and drivers from choosing these circuits, affecting their financial viability. While track owner Red Bull may have the means to install more gravel traps, they have not found sufficient motivation to do so thus far. Moreover, if F1 stakeholders claim that drivers would be able to stay within track limits if there were gravel traps, it implies that they are capable of doing so without relying on the presence of gravel. Ultimately, finding a balance between prioritizing the safety and requirements of Formula 1 while considering the long-term sustainability and inclusiveness of circuits for a variety of motorsport categories remains a complex challenge. The Austrian GP controversy may not definitely settle the results, as teams that have been affected may consider challenging the penalties imposed on them. However, it does not resolve the broader debate surrounding track limits. As Formula 1 heads to Silverstone for the British Grand Prix, several questions are likely to arise. Is the current rule regarding track limits correct? Should there be a more stringent monitoring system, or do the drivers simply need to adhere strictly to the track boundaries? There will undoubtedly be discussions about whether this situation highlights inherent flaws in Formula 1's track limits rule, or if it has merely exposed leniency that drivers have taken advantage of at this specific circuit over time. The implementation of the zero-tolerance rule was intended to address inconsistencies in ruling and guidelines across different tracks and corners. While the idea was appealing, it appeared to be unsuccessful in practice. Teams and drivers have expressed support for a unified rule across all circuits. They have also voiced concerns about aggressive curbing being used as a deterrent, as it can lead to accidents and damage to the cars. The argument in favor of using the white line as the boundary is that it can be applied consistently at every corner of every track. Natural deterrents like grass and gravel cannot be universally implemented in the same manner. Consequently, the final corner of the Red Bull Ring is no longer monitored using the exit curb as the natural limit, even though it would be effective because drivers lose time by crossing the curb edge when going too wide. However, setting aside the discussion about the merits of the track limits rule, it is essential to acknowledge that the current rule is being properly enforced, and it has exposed a significant number of violations. Regardless of the challenges posed by the track, which undoubtedly play a role, if the race were to be rerun, it is likely that there would be fewer issues because drivers now understand the level of scrutiny they are under and cannot take liberties as they did before. Blaming the track for encouraging such behavior when the rules are known does not seem justified. What are your thoughts on this contentious issue? How can Formula 1 strike the right balance between enforcing track limits and maintaining a level playing field? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.